So I finished watching The Return of the King and wondered, why is everybody leaving? I asked my friend who's read the books, but he didn't seem to know.
That leaf has clearly slowed your mind.
Also, he's pretty square, and I'm starting not to trust him. I asked the internet, but they never really agree on anything. So I went to the library. Darkness took me. But I return to you now, appreciably paler and crazier than when I began. With, why did Frodo have to leave Middle-earth? Okay, so, there's two things you need to know about Frodo. First, he's a ring bearer, because Gandalf left the most evil object there is laying on the floor without even putting newspaper over it. So now Frodo's basically on a countdown to crazy. The ring attracts you, but it also has a sort of evil, draining, depressing effect, like Krispy Kreme donuts. After it was destroyed, the burden was lifted, but it left a deep psychological scar. The same thing happened to Bilbo. Secondly, on Weathertop, Frodo was stabbed by a Morgul blade. I guess the plan was to turn him into a wraith and then he would just give them the ring. That's neat. I would have slapped him with it and just taken the ring, but whatever. The wound never fully healed, and it continued to make him sick from time to time. So Frodo and the other ring bearers were given special permission from the Vala, the sort of angelic powers in the West, to go with the elves to the Undying Lands where they could heal and die in peace. Sam was also technically a ring bearer, from that time Frodo was all and he went west too after Rosie died. Oh, and getting poked by the spider was another thing that continued to make Frodo sick. Something good to know about Tolkien, he understood that the moment you learn about something, it loses its mystery.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
So he was careful every time he answered a question about the world, he alluded to more stories and more questions or kept it mysterious. His main works about Middle-earth were even meant to be like they were written by the hobbits, and things are often presented as though they were only rumor or anecdote. For example, it was rumored that when Legolas left for the Undying Lands, he took Gimli with him because they're such good friends. Also, Gimli wanted to hang with Galadriel. He's into her because she's a mysterious immortal witch with great skin, and she's into him because he's a polite, skilled warrior with a glorious Scottish beard. So why were the elves leaving? The elves are immortal, but they can get weary and die of depression. When elves die, their spirits go to the Undying Lands, where they reincarnate in identical bodies. There they can be immortal without getting sick of the world, and therefore never dying. It was the 3 rings they got from Sauron that slowed the decays of time and allowed them to stay in Middle-earth without getting depressed. But those rings were linked to the One Ring. When Sauron came back, either he would win, and they would be corrupted by his power, or the ring would be destroyed and the power of their rings would go with it, and everything in the realms would fade. So one way or another, the time of the elves was over, so they left. Arwen stayed because it was either be with the smelly but sexy king of men, or be with the guy who owns every Barbra Streisand album. Why were they able to use those rings at all? Sauron didn't actually make those rings. Way back, he came to help the elves make magic rings. But this elf guy, Celebrimbor, made those rings without Sauron's direct help. Those rings were connected to the One Ring, which meant that Sauron could mind control them if they used them. But the elves found out about that, and they just hid them away. But that made him mad, so he sold the rest of the rings and gave them out to the other guys. The human rings made them powerful, like wizards and kings and whatever, but it corrupted them over time. The dwarves weren't as easily corrupted, but it seemed to make them super greedy or something, which worked out for Sauron in the end, because it made them delve too greedily and too deep, and they were attacked by Balrogs and dragons and such.
Let us use it against him.
If you were powerful enough, you actually could use the One Ring. That's why Saruman wanted it so bad. He was only in league with Sauron as a trick so he could get it for himself, use it to overthrow Sauron, and rule over Middle-earth. But because it also corrupts you, you would just become another jerk dictator, Animal Farm style. But that's why Gandalf was so afraid of it, and why Galadriel was tempted to take it. That might also be why hobbits are so good at resisting. They don't have or want power. That's why Bilbo was able to give it up relatively easily, and how after hundreds of years, Smeagol was able to keep some of his former self.
Master's my friend. You don't have any friends.
Okay, lightning round. How did the ring betray Isildur? The ring's a dick. He was running from orcs, so he put it on to go invisible. And like an actual dick, the ring can get bigger and smaller. It got bigger and slipped off his finger, they saw him and killed him. What's with this pendant? Arwen didn't give it to Aragorn. She gave it to Frodo to help him cope with ring withdrawal. I guess it's like elf methadone. How are orcs born? Orcs have sex, presumably with female orcs. They're not dug out of the ground like evil potatoes. Why didn't they use ghosts to clear out Mordor? That's a very good question. In the book, they didn't even use them to clear out Minas Tirith. They used them to scare the Corsairs and nothing else. You guys have been cursed for thousands of years, but we don't want to be a bother. Why is this happening? Any weapon that hits the Witch King is destroyed, and it kinda hurts the person too. It's like a curse or something. Also, I thought they couldn't be killed.
No, you cannot kill them, no.
Apparently they're just difficult to kill, although a good face stabbing seemed to do it. Who's this guy? That's the mouth of Sauron. He used to be like a human, like Aragorn. Arwen is Galadriel's granddaughter, Elrond her son-in-law. Incest must be common when everybody looks the same age and they live forever. Now some interesting differences between the books and the movies. Here the hobbits say, look, elves. In the book, the elves turn and say, look, hobbits. Before arriving at the Prancing Pony, the hobbits ran into a couple of hippies, Tom Bombadil and his partner Goldberry. They weren't depicted as nudists in the book, but they're definitely naked when no one's around. Yeah, that probably would have crushed him. In the book, it was an orc that stabbed him. Then Aragorn hit him with a sword and his head exploded. Legolas's bow was strung with elf hair. In the book, Aragorn didn't get his new sword in the 3rd movie, but when they left Rivendell. And he loved that sword. He showed it to everyone. He was like, behold, Andoriel, the sword that was once broken has been made anew. Oh. You're not taking my sword. You better not take his sword. Just give him the damn sword. See, I'm giving him my sword. Okay. But if you touch it while I'm gone, I will literally make you dead. It was a part of his battle cry at Helm's Deep. He was like, ah, the sword that was broken. Before they stormed the Black Gates, he unsheathed it and said to it, I'm not sheathing you again till the last battle. When Legolas handed over his weapons, he said, be careful, these were given to me by the Lady of Lothlorien. And how like a universe with 3 female characters, men were all like, ah, a girl touched them.
No man can kill me.
In this scene, Eowyn said,
I am no man.
before they started fighting. After which he actually paused and thought, damn, I better watch out. Aragorn was described as having healing hands, but all he did was give Kingsfoil to people. Kingsfoil. 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 He healed Frodo and Sam. It didn't say with what, but I'm guessing that it wasn't not Kingsfoil. Even before he did Frodo, he said, I don't think this is going to do anything, but Sam and Frodo didn't break up, and they generally listened when Gollum talked to himself like a 6-year-old girl. They didn't know the specifics, but before they went into the spider's lair, they said, yeah, this is definitely a trap. Denethor didn't run a couple hundred meters on fire. Saruman doesn't die here. At the end, he goes back and takes over the Shire 1984 style, so the hobbits band together and take it back. Gandalf was there, but he didn't help. He said, my time is done. I'm not helping people on Middle-earth anymore. I'm sure you'll do fine. I'm gonna go get high with Bombadil. Saruman still gets killed by coked out Jack White, so I guess it's not that different. Overall, the movies did great, except this scene. Could have been a touching moment like, you saved the world, Frodo. Gandalf, you're alive. But instead, it's just weird. But maybe they wanted to save the moment for here.
You bow to no one.
Tearjerker. Tolkien wrote a ridiculous amount. The Palantir have an origin story. There's family trees for everyone. Dozens of languages at least partially worked out. Anecdotes on the production of lambus bread. You could read it all and it would still feel like it's only placed inside a larger world. Or you could study the real world's history. Like, did you know that in ancient Roman culture it was okay to